Hello, everyone. It is the 9th of April, 2021, and it is our episode 4 breakdown for Falcon and Winter Soldier. I am Greg, and with me is Josh.
Hello.
And are you the only one here?
Now I am, yes.
All right. Okay, so again, damn, this episode. Really, really good. We got our leaked footage that we saw from that I leaked a couple of weeks ago. The leaked footage of John Walker's act. That, in my opinion, this is the big this is the big turning point. This is where he crossed the line. This is where he's not Captain America anymore. This is the U.S. agent. Josh,
Yeah.
first thoughts on the show overall.
I thought this one was fantastic. And this one made me realise more so that the thing that sets this show apart from other Marvel projects, and the same goes for WandaVision, is that there is actual layers to unpack. Like, there is a lot under the surface. It's not just a dumb superhero movie. It is, like, it genuinely is a story driven by characters. And those characters have layers, and those layers define them and shape the story. And I think it is very unique and mature in that sense. It doesn't feel like a superhero project, it genuinely feels like it is just about the characters.
I 100% agree with that. It absolutely is. This show has, I mean, they've continued to show a level of real maturity, but also, I mean, there's still levity to it. There's still a humor to it. I mean, even one of my favorite bits was everybody's fighting and Zemo just sneaks away, and it's a brilliant touch because it is such an intense episode. I mean, it really was an intense episode, and I knew it was coming. I knew that it was. I wasn't expecting the bloody shield. I mean, John Walker ends up splattered with blood, and this shield is just, and the shield's covered with a huge blood stain. And what did you, the name of the episode is "The Whole World Is Watching." Obviously, it's a reference to the end of the episode, right? I mean, we
Yeah,
agreed
absolutely.
on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, him standing there, shield covered in blood, all these people around photographing it. What is for I mean like what was your thought to that? I mean, like, what was your thought process as that final scene played?
Well, I feel like I was lucky because although I saw it coming, I didn't know it was going to happen then. Because I did think he was going to snap and there was going to be that turning point where he does something excessively violent, but I thought it was going to be the next episode. So
Oh.
I was like, it like hit me, and I was like, Jesus, he did that because it is like brutal. It really is, and the whole world is watching. It's appropriate. He is going to have to deal with the results of it, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people start to treat him.
Now, also, first, right off the bat, of course, intense episode. Cross says Falcone and the Holiday Killer. Liz edits. Hello, Liz. Says Zemo is awesome. ASM says, I don't know the actor's name, but Zemo has been played so well. Daniel Brohl.
Yeah,
Vex says, honestly, I'm not defending John Walker, but I understand why he did it. John just saw his best friend get his neck broke, and the people who did it are right there, and anyone will want revenge. So, yeah. I mean, anyone would want revenge, but again, it's just like, I'm going to go back to Star Wars. You got to be above that. You can't
yeah.
seek
I
revenge. What were you going to say?
I think the important thing is that Steve wouldn't seek revenge after that, which is why John Walker is not fit to be Captain America.
Did you notice? I want to know if this was just me, but did you notice the parallels to that moment in Civil War where Steve is hammering the shield down, but and you think, oh my God, is he going to? And Tony even thinks, is he going to kill me? And all he does is shut down the arc reactor.
I
Like,
I noticed obviously it's the same movement. So yeah, I noticed that they were trying to draw a comparison there. And in general, this show's really good at comparing things back to the previous Captain America movies throughout.
well,
So,
yeah, there's the parallels. The again, as George Lucas would say, it's like poetry. It rhymes. I mean, like, do you agree? Like, that was on purpose? Like,
yeah, I think they're well aware of what they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean it was again it was a very powerful moment. Now also, so real quick before we get too much further into it, what in terms for you, let's do it this way. What worked for you throughout this, like in this episode? What worked?
The biggest thing, like the most noticeable thing that I was like, damn, this is really cool, is I like the way this episode specifically frames all of the individual like contenders, I guess, for the Shield, and it highlights their similarities and differences to Steve, even if it isn't necessarily crazy obvious. It's still there. Like I briefly mentioned it in the Discord earlier, and I was saying that it shows that Bucky has the powers Steve had, but he isn't as morally there as Steve was. And Sam doesn't have the powers, but he is absolutely morally there. And then John is like, he's a weird amalgamation where he was neither for a while, and then he got the powers, and now he's, well, I mean, look what happened. He straight up killed some guy brutally. So I think drawing those comparisons back to Steve, and then again with Erkstein's, like, the reason he picked him was because he was a good man. The only one of them that I could confidently call a good man is Sam. So I thought, for me, it was like I like that it frames them all in a way, and it somewhat obviously shows you who should be chosen to be Captain America.
I agree with that. Yeah, and again, that there is a lot of power in that statement. I mean, it does wrap around to exactly what Steve told Sam in Avengers Endgame. He's a good man. That's the purveying, that is the wisdom, that's the strength of it, that heart, that compassion, that core of being a good man. And that's what Sam Wilson is. Sam Wilson is a good man, has always been a good man. Before he knew Steve Rogers, before he was the Falcon, he was a good man and still is a good man. And I think there was a lot of power and a lot of weight shown to Sam Wilson. And I'm in love with. I mean, I love the chemistry between Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan. I love their chemistry. They work. I mean, they're brilliant, and I cannot. I mean, like, I really legitimately believe Anthony Mackie is going to be an incredibly charismatic and superior Captain America, especially after this episode. The man can absolutely hold his own and hold his own title, and I can't wait to see Captain America return to the big screen, return to the theaters. On top of that, I love how they continue to build off the character from the Winter Soldier. So he referenced that, yes, he used to help with PTSD. He talked with soldiers, he talked with people, and he has, he has that kind of relationship and he has that kind of personality. So he said, give me time to talk to Carly. And there's so much weight and there's so much character drama here that just works, and everything is firing on all cylinders. What also worked for me is and again, this goes back to Chekhov's gun, which was something that we were talking about in the Discord on a different topic, but it's very similar. But there was a moment early in the episode where the guy who ends up getting murdered by Captain America says, "I always loved Captain America." And I knew the second he said that. Oh my God, you're the one that's getting beat. You're gonna get beat to death. You're the one. And lo and behold, he absolutely was the guy who said, "I love Captain America." And because there's so much power behind that identity and behind that shield. Because this wraps. I mean, there's so much to identity politics, right? And it's inherent in the creation of Captain America. I mean, it is an identity that is completely intertwined with this fictional world. It is 100% a part of it. The identity of Captain America, the weight of it, but now also there's a darkness to it, and there's a dark history to it as well, because now we have the revelations of Isaiah Bradley. There is a corruption associated with what the United States have tried to do to these people, and how they've used them. And again, we see now, John Walker being, just paraded around as just a mascot for America, without, I mean, again, he's not Captain America. This isn't even about Steve. This is about Captain America and what that should represent, and who is Captain America, and it's not John Walker, it's not James, Barnes. It is inherently and always has been Sam Wilson, and it is the character development that made all of this work. This episode was absolutely firing on all cylinders, and we've gotten to a point now where the action is even the choreography and the action has improved over these episodes. There was a weight to it. There was obviously a strength to it that goes without saying, but there was a weight and a significance to every action beat. Every set piece had a reason for happening. It wasn't insignificant. It wasn't wasted. It wasn't thrown about. Everything happened in this episode for a reason. And we had this arc with Lamar and with John Walker that Liz said. Liz said, I feel like John Walker's progression has been done really well over quite a small amount of screen time, and that's 100% accurate. I mean, that it's true. Like, we haven't had that much time with John Walker and Lamar, but damn if they didn't pull it off. I mean, they really, really pulled it off. Real quick, I'm going to jump around to a couple more comments. Vex says, I think not only is the title a reference to that scene, again, the whole world is watching, but to the 1960s protests where protesters were using the cry, the whole world is watching, in a reference to the footage of police brutality. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. That is, I 100% agree. That struck my mind as well. I thought of that same chord that they were going down. There are layers to that title, the whole world is watching, especially, I mean, again, you look at the riots, you look at the protests, you look at everything going on, and yeah, more than ever, even if you want to take it literally that everybody has a phone in their pocket, they just they just captured footage of American brutality on foreign soil. Like that's there's going to be consequences to this, significant consequences to this. Let's see. Apollo Gates says Anthony Mackie needs a movie. He can hold his own. I'm sure that's happening, 100%. Liz says, I love that they did the storyline with John before Sam took over, because replacing Steve as Captain America is quite controversial, but having someone worse before Sam takes over works well. Again, absolutely agree with that. Terry Bagitta says, I don't necessarily see that Sam is going to get a standalone Captain America film. I think they'll use Mackie for only the Avenger films. Again, like I said, a solo-led Sam Wilson Captain America will happen. Vex says, also, who do you think the episode 5 cameo is going to be? Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. Cross says, it just got out that the next episode... Yes, the next episode is... we were talking about this in the Discord. Episode 5 is 61 minutes long, and Sam and Bucky are going back to Louisiana. Let's see... Vex says, I wonder if we get John Walker going on trial and then U.S. Agent versus John Walker. And then... Well, yeah, Latvia is the neighbor to Latveria, but they haven't, again, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. They haven't actually named Latveria. And Batwing says, I am loving this show so far. It seems to be really engaging and enjoyable. John Walker killing was shocking, and I am really glad he will become an anti-hero. I don't see him as an anti-hero. I mean, I really don't. I think that... I really think that he's going to take a turn. I mean, he already has taken a turn, but I don't think his... I don't consider him an anti-hero. Adam Stewart says that John Walker scene was amazing, but it was kind of justified. I mean, again...
It was justified, but it wasn't heroic. So it doesn't really...
But was it justified? He killed... I mean, the person didn't do anything.
I mean, maybe not justified. It was... You can trace it back.
Killing someone that didn't... I mean, he killed someone that didn't do anything.
Well, maybe justified isn't the right word, because it's specifically, like, it refers to it being somewhat correct, which it isn't.
And no, it's not. Justified, I mean, I have to, I can't agree to the use of the word justified. He didn't go after Carly. He chose a random person that was a part of this group, which, again, they got swept up in it, but it's not the same. I mean, this guy didn't murder anybody. He didn't do anything. And
I mean, you can track it back. You can see that it isn't just unfounded. There is reasoning. He's like, this group killed my partner and that, but it's not right and it isn't justified.
Well, yeah, but do you think again, if you'll allow me, if you want to look into the metaphor of this and you want to have a deep conversation, which I'm always for, but do you think that there's a larger discussion to be had there? You know, you look at the group, the Flag Smashers, right? And you look at it, and these people, they were put out, and so all these people came together because they were looking for a reason. They were, trying to help each other. That's what it started as. Carly corrupted it, you could say, but should you judge? And again, there is a lesson here. Do you judge the entire group of people the same way as what one person did?
No, but that's what he does, which is why I
That's
think
what
he
he
is a
does.
villainous character as well,
That's
because
why
he's
he's
in the
not a
wrong.
hero.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why John Walker's not a hero. That's
And
why
he's that's also why he's not Captain America. He's not ever going to be Captain America material, because even trace it back to the first one, Steve says several times like he doesn't necessarily want to kill Nazis or anything. He just doesn't like bullies, And it's nothing like specific to a group. He's just doing what he has to save people's lives, opposed to John Walker, who is brutally murdering people because of something they weren't even guilty for.
Exactly. And that's the lesson we're missing here, because there is something deeper here. Walker resorted to violence on someone who was innocent. And I'm sorry if that's not fucking pulled out of the headlines. I mean, it's right there. It's right there. We all know it. We all see the news. No matter where you are in the world, something's always happening. But yeah, what Carly did was wrong. Don't what Carly did was wrong. Carly murdered people. Carly needs to be held accountable. She needs to go to she needs to be arrested. Absolutely. Carly is turning what this organization that came together to help people, Carly is turning it into a terrorist organization. She's turning it into something else, and these people are getting swept up. And you see their reaction. They were shocked by what she did when she blew up the building, and they didn't even know about it. We have to remember what's going on in terms of character. These people did not know Carly was going to bomb the place. And then Carly goes and murders Lamar. Carly did those things. So John Walker, looking at the entire group the same way, John Walker looked at an entire group of people and he said, "You're all criminals." It sounds familiar to me. I mean, again, there's a lot to unpack in this episode if you want to and if you look at it. What John Walker did, I'm sorry, I don't think it was understandable. He didn't decide to go after Carly. He chose someone who was terrified. He chose someone who did nothing wrong. He chose someone who he didn't know their history. He didn't know why they were there. He had no understanding of the circumstances that was surrounding this. Sam could have stopped this. That's why Sam is Captain America. Sam went in to talk. Sam could have stopped this. Sam could have stopped all of this from happening. John Walker is dangerous. He's not an anti-hero. He's the villain. He just killed an innocent man. That's what he did. And there is footage, dozens and dozens of people. Sound familiar, doesn't it? Of captured footage of him, John Walker killing an innocent man. And so I had strong feelings watching this episode. I did. I really did. I'm not going to lie, because I can't help it. I've make no bones about the channel and about who I am. If you've watched videos before, then you know. And if you're just joining and you don't know, I have no problem admitting it. I've attended protests. I've had problems with the police at those protests, at Black Lives Matter protests. I have a reaction to watching this show. I do. It feels very, very different to me, because I'm seeing something else in the actions that are occurring, right? So it ends up feeling personal, because I've had friends who have lost their lives because of brutality. This is a very different world to look at in terms of Disney, and I applaud Disney giving the leeway to allow these creators to tell this kind of story, even if it is light. I don't think they've gone deep enough, and that's something that I wanted to wrap back around just real quick. Batwing asks, so he's a villain? Yeah, I think I've answered that. I do feel like he is. Cross says, I think it's funny how Battlestar said that John always made the best decisions in the heat of the moment, and then John makes the worst possible decision in the heat of the moment at the end. I do. I agree with that. Apollo Gates says Walker just resorts to violence. There's a lot of debate on whether or not John Walker was relatable or understandable. Vex says he just wanted the Flag Smashers. Adam Stewart says, now will the government send someone else? Interesting. Let's Let's see. Maybe he then. Let's see. Comments about John Walker. Maybe he has anxiety, suffering from depression. Um, eh, let's see. And then ASM. The whole thing about does the ends justify the means when Carly can with Carly can be applied to John Walker and Steve as well. John's means are wrong, even though his ends are correct, whereas Steve is opposite. And then Jonas Dixon asks, "Was that man innocent, though?" And again, yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, yes, the man was innocent. We saw the Flag Smashers' reaction. We know that they had no idea. They had
Can
no
I
idea. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just want to chime in about the ends justify the means
Oh, go
thing.
ahead. Go ahead.
I do. I see where you're coming from, but I don't. I think the difference is it's Carly who's her means of getting what she, her means are wrong, but her ends are right. Steve's means and his ends are right, and then and for John, neither are right. That's the difference. That's what separates them. Opposed to, like, the issue is John doesn't have any right, which is why he isn't necessarily, he's not correct to be Captain America. I don't think he's necessarily completely evil. He's just he isn't an anti-hero, because an anti-hero is, in my opinion, somebody who is looking to do the right thing but doesn't go about it well, and usually murders people savagely. But John Walker doesn't really, he's not in it for the right reasons. He wants to be a superhero. He doesn't want to be an actual hero, He wants to be like glorification.
Exactly. That's all he wants. You're 100% right on that. He considers himself above it all. I mean, you can tell that just through his personality. And again, it goes right back to that conversation. I love that Zemo had the opportunity. He didn't take the serum. He destroyed it. I love that character moment. Then he goes to Sam Wilson and he says, "Sam, would you take it?" And Sam answers instantly, "No." That's powerful in and of itself. I mean, I love that Sam said he wouldn't take it. I loved that. John Walker, again, just like Lamar, they both instantly said, yeah, they would take it. And what does John Walker do? John Walker takes it. He takes it for himself. He doesn't give it to Lamar. If he gave it to Lamar, Lamar'd be alive. He doesn't offer to share it. Think about that. Think about the selfishness. And look at Lamar's reaction. Lamar didn't know he even did it. Think about that. Think about, he goes on and on throughout this episode about you got to have your partner's back. You got to watch out for your partner. You got to do this for your partner. What does John Walker do with all that partner bullshit? It's the ultimate hypocrisy, and that's what I thought this episode was really powerful in exploring. John Walker looks at Lamar, and Lamar says, "Hells yeah, I'd take it." And what does John do? He doesn't even let him know. He didn't have his partner's back. He was all bullshit and grandstanding. He didn't do shit. And the weight of that, Lamar could have had it. Lamar could have had the serum. He could have given it to him right there. He could have said, "You know what? You said you wanted it. Here you go." He could have talked with his partner. But no, nothing. Just selfishness. That's all it was selfishness. Lamar's dead. Absolutely. And is Carly physically responsible? Yes. Carly committed murder. Carly, therefore, she did. She murdered innocent people in a building. She blew up a building. Then she murdered Lamar. She should be arrested. There's no question about it. No question about it. She should be arrested. John Walker, though, it doesn't matter if he's Captain America. He should be arrested. You're not above the law. The question is where does the show go from there? Is he going to be above the law? Will he get a slap on the wrist, or will someone bring him in? That's the interesting step about where this story develops. Is Captain America going to be allowed to walk off scot-free after killing an innocent man? That's interesting. That's very interesting. And that's why this show, I have such a wrestling with, is WandaVision my favorite show, or is this my favorite show? Because I love them both. I love them both for so many different reasons. And what I love about this is, an episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier ends, and there's really thoughtful conversations to be had afterward, in my opinion. Okay, real quick. Jonas, I'm gonna say Jonas. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Is it Jonas or Jonas? All you gotta do is let me know. Jonas Dixon says Steve wasn't in the worst kind of war, though. He has no PTSD. I mean, it was. I don't want to downplay World War II. World War II was horrific. And again, I knew survivors of World War II. Unfortunately, a very, very good man. He passed away, but they did come back. I mean, they saw things that that haunted them forever. I mean, they did. They absolutely did. Now, of course, Steve is a comic book character. There's difference, obviously there's differences, but there is still weight to be carried with the Second World War because of the Holocaust, Auschwitz. I mean, they saw horrific things. Saucy says Steve has gone through way more than John Walker. Well, yeah, just by necessity, he absolutely has. He absolutely has. um, let's see. Walker would kept the serum a secret for as long as he could, I bet. And again, I agree with you. I agree with you. Do you still believe that Omega Red rumor? Again, we talked about rumors and leaks prior. I don't want to get too far into it because there's no warnings in this episode description that I'm going to be discussing any leaks or rumors. But I've questioned the Omega Red rumor for a very long time, and I'll leave it at that because there's no warning in this. This is just a breakdown for episode 4, and I don't want to spoil. This isn't the place for that. Let's see. Vex said, I think the reason why he took the serum is when Lamar said, imagine how many lives we could have saved if we had that serum. And again, yeah, I mean, we can excuse why he took it. Ultimately, he took it. He took it. He didn't offer it to Lamar. He didn't tell Lamar about what happened. He didn't tell Lamar he had it. So what I think is more interesting is the character, the bullshit that he pulls. He doesn't tell his partner after all that talk about the partner. That, to me, is the more important takeaway. Ultimately, John Walker took it because he's selfish. Yeah.
Yeah, there is different reasoning to why he took it opposed to why Steve took it. Steve took it because he physically was incapable of helping people and that's all he wanted to do. Yeah. Opposed to John, who took it because, although he was capable of helping people, he wanted to be Steve. He's never going to be, but it's selfishly driven opposed to Steve, who's completely selfless.
Exactly, and that's another difference. Is as far as John Walker's, all he sees is, oh, I'm going to be Steve Rogers. I'm going to be the next Steve Rogers. James and Sam Wilson, they don't give a crap about that. They don't. They're not. Sam isn't saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be the next Steve Rogers. Like, there is a difference in character there. There is a different depth to that. Nobody, Sam knows he's a good guy. Sam knows that, this isn't about Steve Rogers. I'm still just, I do everything he does, but slower. It's one of my favorite fucking lines in the entire MCU. I love that line from the Winter Soldier. Josh, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
I assumed you would, but 100%. That's Sam in a nutshell. That's it. It's not about being Steve Rogers. It's not about that at all. Sam is his own man, and that's, and he has his own strength. Let's see what else we got. What else? Let's see. Vex is speculating on, if, again, John Walker ending up in jail and being approached by someone, it could very, very likely happen because the Thunderbolts are coming.
I think he's dead by the end of the show, to be honest.
Interesting. I'm not going to comment any further, but that's interesting. How do you? Okay, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think he dies then?
I think Carly will kill him. I think him and Carly will have some sort of. Well, that's the thing. They're both put against each other now because each of them has killed one of their friends. So they're both probably. They seem like vengeful people. I wouldn't be surprised if they're fully going at each other, trying to kill each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of them succeeds. So either Carly will kill him or he will kill Carly, I think, by the end.
Interesting. Okay, so do you think, because I want to pose this question to you, do you think that he'll get off for this murder charge? That he won't face any consequences for murdering this guy?
I think the next episode will I think they'll bring in, forgive me for speculating, but I think they'll bring in Thunderbolt Ross and kind of focus on cleaning up the mess that he made. And I do think that ultimately, at least for the government, they will forgive and forget, opposed to the public who won't.
Interesting. Because again, I mean, I'm gonna warn everybody. Again, I'm fascinated by the episode and the decisions that they're going to make in these last 2 episodes. I have some questions. Everybody's free to answer, absolutely. But I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm going to ask Josh as well. Josh, when you think about, what becomes of Captain America after what amounts to significant brutality and the parallels to police brutality. I mean, let's tackle this subject head on. Did you feel like that's on purpose?
I do. I think it also. I think what we'll see is the public kind of look at what's happened with Captain America now and be like, oh, he's been taken over by the government. He's just another cop, just corrupt.
Interesting. And do you think so? Do you also think then that the extension of that is he gets a slap on the wrist, but he's still going to be Captain America as far as the U.S. government's concerned?
I don't think he'll be able to be Captain America because I truly believe that Sam and Bucky will steal the shield from him. Like, I think that'll be how the next episode opens, and then they'll go back to Louisiana, and John Walker he'll go through the ringer with the government, but I think he will be forgiven, and maybe he will fully actually become U.S. agent, because, I think they could do something clever with saying how maybe the public will label him U.S. agent because he isn't quite Captain America, but he is representative of America in the worst ways. So maybe they will still label him U.S. agent in the end, but I don't think we'll see him as purely Captain America. He'll be some sort of weird mutated form of Captain America.
Interesting. Okay. A lot of people are discussing in the comments about whether or not Zemo is making it out of the series alive. What do you think?
I definitely think Zemo's making it out alive. I think Zemo and either Carly or John is making it out alive. I don't think both of them will.
Okay, that's fair. So obviously we know next week is the longest episode to date. At 62 minutes, it's the longest episode to date, and we know that Sam and Bucky are returning to. We know that they're going back to Louisiana. Sam and Bucky are going back home, so to speak. In terms of that, because we know where they are right now in the world. So, again, I'm going to ask because I'm not going to make any statements, so I'm going to ask a few things. Do you think that Sam and Bucky are going to be on the run?
Yes, I think they might. In some sense, I think they might be blamed with at least a little bit of responsibility for John's actions.
Interesting. That's interesting. Putting off the blame on that. That's interesting. Okay. Liz Edit says, I'm not sure how much of a villain Zemo is anymore. Could he move in a kind of Loki direction if he doesn't die? Absolutely, I think so. I think Daniel Brohl has been 100% set up to lead the charge in a new direction, so to speak. I'm going to be as vague as possible. Let's see. Adam says, so what's going on with Power Broker? Will he show up in episode 5 or finale? Interesting that you say he. Vex says, and the government's saying it in the MCU, it was the Flag Smashers, and then he becomes U.S. agent. Because Vex has a theory, what if John's old general was Ross as he fought in Afghanistan, and Ross was definitely sending soldiers and fighting in that time? And that's how Ross is introduced. That's Vex's theory. And Eddie says Zemo, U.S. agent, Yelena, Taskmaster, Songbird, and the possibility of Thunderbolts with the Red Hulk. Very interesting. Again, I can tell you that Red Hulk is coming. I can tell you that as vaguely as possible. The Red Hulk is coming to the MCU. But yes, I mean, we're seeing the origins of a lot of Thunderbolts, so to speak. Vex says, Liz, I don't think so. I have to disagree. I really do think, I mean, Zemo has been established. Yeah, I think he's going to be another character like, that he's going to end up being. Well, not even going to. He is. Look at the memes.
Yeah.
Look at the fucking.
That's the thing. They are. They're aware because they released the so-called Zemo cut. Like they're going to ride this wave and they're going to make a lot of money off it. It's foolish not to. They're going to make him a much larger part. And the second I saw him dancing last week, I actually said he is going to be the new Loki. They're going to push him in the same way they pushed Loki back in 2012.
Yes, we did. In our episode 3 breakdown, we specifically talked about Zemo is going to explode after that episode. And look at this week. Look at this
Yeah.
fucking week. He was
I don't think.
he was the number one trending item in the United States. Holy fuck, Marvel. I mean, they don't even have to spend any fucking money.
Yeah, I don't think he will. I don't think he'll be, I guess, as heroic as Loki is, because Loki, in a way, he is justified. Loki, like at least to an extent,
Well, hold on,
his
hold on,
evil
hold on.
actions.
Wait. Well, I mean, again, now John Walker and Carly, they're not justified. You don't think Zemo's justified though because of Sokovia?
I think Zemo's justified, but I think he's so set in his ways. That's the issue. I don't think we'll ever see him be as quite as heroic as Loki has become recently.
You don't
Because
think
Loki.
now again though,
Mhm.
you say that, but he saved them several times.
Yeah, but only so he could get what he wanted.
Okay, but he still, when push came to shove, he still destroyed the serum.
But that's because he doesn't want superheroes. That's the issue. I don't necessarily think he'll be villainous, but he will always be at odds with the Avengers. He has to be.
He has to be. I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't mean like he's going to be a hero and join the Avengers, but
No. I just don't think he'll.
like Loki.
Yeah, I don't think he'll quite be. That's the thing. Loki is morally grey, but he, at least now, he is slightly, in my opinion, going a little bit towards the light side, which is why I'm happy he's, in a way, he's kind of regressed for the Loki show, because they've literally ripped him out of it, previous years.
Well, yeah. I just I can't say anything about Loki. So I'm trying to think. Let me I want to phrase this correctly. What would you say, like, at the core of Loki and at Zemo's core, like, what would you say is the one thing that drives both of them?
I always bring it back to the first Thor movie. I genuinely think Loki just wanted to be his equal, whilst I think Zemo, he has kind of more of a malicious intent. He genuinely just wants to kill every superhero.
So, you say, I mean, but again, he is justified. He blames them for the loss of his family. He absolutely does. He doesn't. He thinks the Avengers and he thinks all superpowered people are a danger to society, and so. And this is why, like, I don't like the term anti-hero. I know it's used often. It's not a term that I favor. It's not one I care for. I think it's an overused phrase, just like dark and gritty is an overused phrase. But if we look in terms of the Thunderbolts, and again, I'm just posing questions. But if we look in terms of the Thunderbolts, could you see an adaptation where Zemo leads a team, leads a team of Thunderbolts, leads the Thunderbolts in an adaptation where they are brought together to hunt down dangerous, powered individuals?
Yeah, I could see that, because Zemo would be for it. He'd be all there. He'd want that, and it would make sense because it's the Thunderbolts. Ross is going to be involved, and he also. Although not quite as directly as Zemo, I've always got the vibe that he just doesn't like superheroes. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have some sort of mutual agreement where they will help each other just take out everyone.
Interesting. Okay, that's fair. Let's see. Terry McGinnis says Zemo is a villain. He's not Loki. Liz says Zemo is also quite reasonable in this show, though. He's much less narcissistic than Loki. I agree with that. He is. Zemo's been reasonable. He has.
Yeah.
Does he stab
and
people
you are
back like Loki? Yeah, but Loki did it too. But he has been incredibly reasonable.
and Liz is completely right. Loki is a narcissist. He's selfish. He's completely driven by his own actions, whilst opposed to Zemo, who he's more so driven by, he thinks he's doing the greater good. He thinks by wiping out every superhero he will help the world in the long run. He's misguided. He's not evil.
Exactly, because and for me this is, and again this is my interpretation, but I see Zemo, and as a husband and father, this is just how this is how I feel and how I interpret it. In my opinion, though, Zemo's driven by tragedy. At Zemo's
Yeah.
core is tragedy. Every decision he makes is because of that one tragedy where he lost everyone he loved in an instant. And that's it. That's his driving force. That's what every decision he makes is based off of that. If Sokovia did not happen, he would not exist. This identity, so to speak, would not exist. And that's important to point out. That's how I see it. Loki was selfish, egotistical, and he was always driven by those things. He didn't suffer any great loss. He really didn't. He had a rivalry with his adopted brother. They had this tumultuous relationship. But Loki's always been driven by that, and not even beyond any aspect of tragedy. Loki was driven by jealousy. Loki was driven by something different at his core, and that led him to want different things. And that's where I do think Zemo has been far more reasonable, and I think Zemo is just as interesting of a character as Loki. I really do. I think they're both absolutely fascinating, and I can't wait to see more of Daniel Brohl as Zemo. I think it's just been an absolute brilliant treat. Okay, real quick. Uh, Adam says, who would the Thunderbolts go after? Villains or heroes gone rogue? Both, technically, because again, they would just be going after dangerous mutants, dangerous inhumans, superpowered individuals, anything like that. Any kind of
I
human mutate. What?
Yeah, I think it would be literally anybody who doesn't align perfectly with the government.
Or if the Thunderbolts or whatever this villain team ends up being called, it could very well. If it's not called the Thunderbolts, it could just be Zemo putting a group together. Something
Yeah, I
like the
think
Avengers, like the Masters of Evil,
I think what could happen is
just not called that. But anyway, go ahead.
because obviously Ross he wants to. He's very by the book, I feel, and I feel like he would want to wipe out anyone that doesn't fully align with the government, and it makes sense that Zemo would agree to that, and he would take out people that don't align with the government because they're superpowered individuals, they're people he does not believe should exist. And then afterwards, maybe like a couple of years down the line, he betrays them. Well, he betrays Ross and kind of takes the team for himself, and they'll go against the heroes after all the villains are at least temporarily dealt with.
Right, right.
That way, Zemo could get everything he wanted. And he's a very, very logical person. I can see him seeing Ross's plans as an opportunity.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, so Eddie says, could I see Bucky on the Thunderbolts if he does not get the mantle of Cap? Well, one, I mean, obviously no. Like James is not going to get the mantle of Captain America. That ship has sailed. Being on the Thunderbolts, I don't think so. I don't. Not this iteration anyway. I think something would have to change. I don't see. I can't see a scenario where James works with Ross and works with Zemo full time. I think James is an Avenger through and through. I think that's inherently a part of that character. That's how I feel about it though. Like but that's me. That's it. That's how I interpret the story. That's how I interpret the characters.
I kind of think he'll fly solo for a while. Like I think he'll come back when they really need him, but I don't think he'll be like Tony Stark who kind of for a while lived to be an Avenger. I really think it will be Bucky he's alone most of the time, and then when the world properly needs him, he comes in to help the Avengers.
Interesting. Okay, that's fair. Excuse me. But no, I mean, but I agree with that. I could see him on his own as well. I could I could see James wanting to get out of it and just be alone for a little bit. I do agree with that. But as for like the Thunderbolts, things like that, no, I don't think that's in this character adaptation. Jay Asher says Zemo is fully justified because of Sokovia, and it was Stark's fault, but he has to answer for the death of King T'Chaka, and I agree with that. I do. I 100% agree with that. He does have to answer for that death. It's the thing is that Marvel has done such a brilliant job of creating these multifaceted villains because you look at Carly and you understand where she's coming from. She's still a murderer, though. You look at Zemo and he lost his entire family. You know where he's coming from. You look at Loki. You love Loki. Everyone loves Loki. You look at Magneto. Everyone loves Magneto. Like a lot of times when people talk about these kind of characters, no, we can't. I mean, like we're excited to see the X-Men, but like the villains kind of make these stories. I mean, Eric Lyncher, Magneto, is a fascinating, multifaceted character. He's not just a villain. Same as Loki, same as Zemo, and we follow them because we are so immersed in their story and all of their stories. Yes, I mean Magneto's absolutely tragic. He is defined by tragedy. He is defined by tragedy, just like Zemo is, just like Cardley is, and I think that those characters always draw us in, undoubtedly. Because I mean, when Magneto comes around, we're going to be having the same conversation. We're going to love him, and he's going to be justified because we know what he went through in the Holocaust. So there is that weight to it, and yeah, Zemo went and he blew up the UN. Now again, you can argue he did all of this because he wanted the attention of the Avengers. He wanted to draw out, Steve and Tony and put them at odds ultimately, and he was successful in that. He legitimately he was. I know people talk about Thanos, and people go on and on that Thanos was the first villain to win. He wasn't though. Zemo won in Civil War. I mean, do you agree with that? Like, because I always thought that was weird, Josh. I mean, did you ever get that? Like, Thanos wasn't the first one to win. Zemo won, or do you disagree with that?
I mean, they explicitly say it in the film at the end. He's talking to Everett Ross, and Everett Ross is like, "How does it feel to lose so spectacularly?" And he questions. He's like, "Did I?" And
Yeah.
he didn't. You look at everybody, and he did. He did not fail. He succeeded. Everybody is split up for Infinity War, and frankly, I think Thanos should be thanking Zemo because if they weren't split up, they would have had a good chance. They really would.
Interesting, and I do. I agree with that. Like I 100% agree with that. Ford says, but Loki was lied to most of his life by his own parent, and yeah, he was. But and again, Josh, I'll ask you. I mean, we know Loki's story, and I know you recently rewatched the first Thor. I mean, is the lie tragic though? I mean, is the lie enough to justify everything Loki's done?
Well, no, because that's the thing. Even if you watch the film, he finds out at the end after he's already done all the evil stuff. The reason he acts out and I think he lets giants into Asgard or something. I don't remember. I barely paid attention watching it, but it's
They're not the
he
best
does. Yeah,
Go on.
it's terrible.
Yeah,
he
go on.
he chooses to do that because he's jealous of the fact that Thor is entitled to the throne, and that is where that's where Odin has to be like, you're not even technically allowed the throne. You're adopted. You're a frost giant, and then it's kind of in a way it's the straw that put the camel's back because Loki later he screams and he's like, "This is why you favored Thor all these years. You can have a frost giant sitting on the throne of Asgard," and he's not necessarily right in being upset that he was adopted. He's upset that he's not treated equally to Thor, and he suspects that's the reason, but it isn't.
Exactly. Real quick, Terry, of course, it's sibling rivalry. Loki is jealous of Thor. Things we discussed. I really think though Liz summed this up really hilariously. Liz Edits said, "I feel like part of Loki's charm is that he's an unreasonable drama queen," and I've never heard it put so succinctly, and that's just I loved that. That's a great turn of phrase. Jonas says that is fucked up though in referencing to Loki. Loki, he was taken, not adopted, and
Well, kind of. Odin just wiped out half of his people. They were in they were dying. The baby likely would have died if Odin didn't adopt him, and it is adopting because it's not like he took him and threw him in a cell. He treated him like royalty.
yeah, I mean, I can't. Oh, I mean, I know that there is moral ambiguity here, absolutely. But they were at war with the Frost Giants. Odin found a lone surviving child. He doesn't kill the child. He takes him and adopts him and raises him in royalty. I mean, I just Loki's being unreasonable. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not the same in my opinion. Like it's not what Zemo and Carly went through. It's really not. I mean, I there's just there's a different, and obviously Loki's beloved. I get that Loki is beloved. I mean, everybody loves him. He's getting 2 seasons of a show for God's sake. But it is interesting because there are different things that drive these characters, and I mean, I can look at it and say Zemo's justified. I can look at it and say even to a oh hang on Liz Edit says, and even if you compare Thor and Loki with Gamora and Nebula, who have a similar relationship, and Nebula is similarly driven to Loki, but she has so much more trauma behind her, and she's much less evil. That's true too. And yeah, Odin was Odin was again another morally gray character, as we learned in Ragnarok. But Jonas says that was a cover up. I don't.
It wasn't a cover up. It was covered up, but that is the actual truth. That's
Yeah,
why he took him.
that's not really. I mean, again though, that's. I don't consider that the same storytelling. I mean, like, I don't consider that the same justified reasons. Obviously they were at war with the Frost Giants. That happened. That occurred. Loki was a surviving child. Odin took him in, raised him like royalty. No prison, no cage or anything. So I think I just think it's different. I can see. Terry McGinnis said Zemo isn't justified because he goes to great lengths to destroy the Avengers. Again, that's I mean, again, he goes to great lengths to destroy the Avengers because the Avengers, he blames them because Tony goes and creates Ultron. Tony fucks around and pulls a bunch of bullshit. Yes, I mean, Zemo is inherently that's justified. That is, I mean,
I think
what he's doing is justified because he looks at it and goes, there doesn't need to be superheroes. Look at what people like Tony Stark keep doing when they consider themselves gods and consider themselves above us. There is a statement and a logic to be made to that. There absolutely is. What were you going to say, Josh?
I think his motivations are justified. I don't think his actions are. Like, you can see why he's acting the way he is, but they're morally wrong. You shouldn't blow up the UN under any circumstances.
Interesting.
I understand why, and I sympathise with it because the man's lost literally everything at the hands of superheroes. But he's still, those actions are still villainous, and in that sense, he is still a villain. Like I get that it's tricky when you're talking about superheroes because it's so easy to slap a label and everything because that's what it's been for years. It's been two extremes.
Yeah, 80 years.
Really good, really bad.
Yeah, really good,
and
really bad. That's it. You have good guys, you have bad guys, and that's comic books in a nutshell. But I don't think cinema has to be perceived that way.
Yeah, exactly. We're exploring that grey area, which I think is fantastic, and I do think Loki, Thanos, and Zemo are shining examples of at least somewhat understandable characters whose actions are inherently wrong.
No. I mean, again, yeah, murder is wrong. There's no argument with that. Murder is absolutely wrong. But again, also looking at it, you lose your entire family to a bunch of crazy superheroes, and it's their fault that Ultron was even created. And because again, the statement is that they keep they're cleaning up their own fucking messes, and like the inherent drama in that is brilliant because it's their fault. Ultron is their fault, and that's brilliant. It's their fault in the comics too, except it was Dr. Henry Pym, but it's their fucking fault. They did that. Sokovia wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have lost his entire family. He wouldn't have lost his parents, his wife, his child. I mean, again, to each their own, of course. But as a husband, as a father, no, I'm sorry. That was the superhero. That was their fault. That was them. They created Ultron. They didn't have to. They did that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a matter of it is a matter of responsibility. I mean, even Tony in Civil War, he takes responsibility for Ultron. He says, that was us. That's on us. It continuously is on them. And he looks at it as you have these group of people, and then what continues to happen? You know, what is the follow up? What is the continuing escalation of that? You have Hulk go through a town in Africa. You have Scarlet Witch mind control him, and Hulk goes through on a rampage. You have continuing escalation of superheroes causing damage and cleaning up after their own messes. And it's a fascinating discussion to have because it's not that clean cut. It's not. Comics likes to make it clean cut, but I think there's obviously a deeper discussion there, and I think Zemo's fascinating because of it. I think Zemo, he destroys the super soldier serum. He killed the super soldiers in Civil War. His actions have been continuously to remove them from the field because he thinks they are creating an imbalance. And again, that even goes back to the tale as old as time, Star Wars, balance of the Force. Zemo believes that they are creating a global and now cosmic imbalance. And again, is there truth to what he says? Well, their actions say that there is. He lost his family. What are you going to do if you lose your family? There's weight to that. There is, just like what there is with Carly. The question is how they go about it. Now, breaking apart the Avengers, I think yeah, sure, break apart the Avengers. Blowing up the UN? Obviously no. Carly blew up the hospital? Obviously no. But it's still, I think Zemo's, honestly, one of the most interesting characters Marvel Studios has crafted. I really do. Good Lord. He's been fascinating to watch these last few weeks. He's been immensely entertaining. He's been so fascinating how the peaks we get into this character as they deconstruct Sam and as they deconstruct James, and then we get this little peeks at Zemo's character, and I think it's fascinating. I really, really do. Let's see. Adam Stewart says, will Ross ask Taskmaster to join his group in Black Widow? Interesting question. Will we see the origins of Taskmaster in Black Widow? You'll see a Taskmaster. I'll leave it at that. Vex says Disney would make so much money if they made Flag Smasher masks for merchandise and a bloody shield for a statue. I guess they probably would. I suppose so, yeah.
We'll see it one day.
I'm sure we'll see cosplay of Flag Smashers. And now the bloody shield, I don't know. I guess but to each their own.
They do statues in there. I'm sure somewhere down the line they get around to them eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Let's see. Terry says it wasn't the Avengers' fault. Jonas says, "Oh, go ahead."
It kind of was the Avengers' fault, and it wasn't just even. It wasn't just their fault it happened either. It was a lot of the damage was caused by them being reckless whilst fighting, and this links into what Jonas has said. He's talking about how it's Tony's fault and she's gonna have to just Tony, but it's not. I don't think Zemo saw those actions of Tony as necessarily what killed his wife. I think he saw the actions of all the Avengers over all of the years. When they've done it to several other people, and even look in Civil War, they break down how many casualties and how many deaths have been caused by the Avengers being reckless in fighting.
Exactly.
And that's what I think Zemo is angry at. Yes, obviously he's very angry that his family is dead, but also I think, in a way, he kind of saw that happens to other people, and he decided, all right, this isn't just Tony Stark, this is everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's fascinating. I think that's a fascinating statement to make because, again, it just goes back to it's hero worship. The Avengers is the brand. The Avengers are beloved. They're this big brand that people love, and that's fine. They're the good guys. They're the good guys, superheroes, and that's fine. And again, they're never going to be written to be out and out villains, but decisions that are made, they've made poor decisions, and I think it's interesting to tackle that. I think it's interesting that they choose to look at it no matter how lightly. Obviously Cap was against it. I don't disagree with that, but that's
why we saw Civil War. That's why we saw them at odds with each other, because Cap didn't feel he was guilty of that.
Exactly.
Which is why they were against each other.
That's right. You nailed it. That's what leads us to it. But it's continuing amounts of violence and hero worship, and again, they're superheroes. It's all fictional to begin with, but ultimately, I think it's a great metaphor and dialogue for the same kind of hero worship we have in the real world, and how often people create circumstances and people perform actions that have a negative consequence, and then we say it wasn't their fault though, and that continues to happen. And I think there is something that I think, again, it's something else worth looking at. It's something else. It's another thing that's worth analyzing. You know, especially from a character perspective like Zemo. Vex says Loki is a dramatic, ungrateful, selfish man by Ragnarok. That ungratefulness starts to go away and then he dies. But yeah, before that, he was a dramatic, ungrateful, selfish man. Cap never did. And yeah, of course, Cap never did. Jonas says Cap punches people and he saved the people from the bomb. He shouldn't have been held accountable. But again, though, that is Civil War in a nutshell.
Yeah, and also again, you can draw a comparison back to John Walker in this. He sees one person's actions and groups everybody around that in with Carly. Exactly. In the same way, Zemo saw Tony's actions and thought, all right, the existence of superheroes is going to make this happen again to more and more people, so I need to stop it.
Exactly.
So he groups everybody in. He doesn't necessarily discriminate against just Tony. He discriminates against the entire group.
Exactly, and that's what's brilliant. The parallels there are so brilliant because Zemo is doing that. Zemo's looked at all superheroes and said, you're all wrong. You shouldn't exist. You shouldn't be in your towers and in your floating helicarriers and all this nonsense. You shouldn't have all this. You should not have all this because you think you're gods. And that's a brilliant parallel. That is. That absolutely is. I mean, frankly, yes, Zemo is justified under the idea that there should be no Avengers. I mean, 100% you can follow his very clear through line and understand his character, and that's what I think is fascinating. He's not a mustache twirling villain. He is a complex character who lost his entire family, his home, his family, everything, every memory, every physical item. Like, you know, all he has is just his memories, and I think it's so powerful. I think it's really so powerful. The Avengers went to great lengths to save the city. Yeah, we're not talking about that. The city happened because they created Ultron.
Yeah, and I don't think it's in question that they did. They were right in trying to save the city. And again, that's the entire conflict of Civil War. That's what it's driven on. Some people think they're right in it, and some people think they're wrong in it. And frankly, they're both. They are doing the right thing, but they're doing it in a way that is causing people to die.
Oh no, I'm good. Thank you.
And that's why Zemo is upset.
Exactly, and I think that's awesome because again, it's you see how this continues how this continues to escalate. Well, Tony and Bruce created Ultron, and from the outside world, again, you had the Iron Legion all working with the Avengers. So again, from the outside world, they all saw that, and this is also ignoring the deeper conversation Josh and I are having about Zemo did take the entire group and put them together. Some people are not responsible for the Ultron mess, but the fact of the matter is, the world looks at the Iron Legion and looks at the creation of Ultron as an Avengers product. They see an Avengers product.
Ultimately, he's wrong. Like he does group these people in the wrong way. He shouldn't do that, and that's why. You know, although yes, we can sympathize with him and see where he's coming from, he isn't 100% right, and that's what makes him kind of walk that line very finely. And he's not quite a villain, but he's definitely not a hero.
No, he's not a hero. But I mean, again, he is a fascinating character with a objective, clean, moral through line. He does not waver. He did not take the serum.
Yeah, and even him killing Even him killing the Winter Soldiers in Civil War, again, it kind of feeds back into him stomping on the serum in this one. He sees a way where he could get what he wants easier, but it would involve him abandoning his morals, at least temporarily, and he's not willing to do that.
I know, and I thought that
Which, in a way, that is another comparison you can make to Steve in Civil War. He refuses to change his ways because he thinks they are right, in the same way that Zemo refuses to change his ways, and he refuses to compromise at any point.
Exactly, no compromises, just like Steve. I mean, I think it's fascinating. I really, legitimately do. I think Zemo has turned out to be an incredibly fascinating character. I mean, just 100%. I think he's going to be a really great character to continue to watch. I mean, because again, obviously the Avengers are always going to be around. They're a multi-billion-dollar property. There is no disbanding the Avengers IP, obviously. But in terms of character, for all these people who have lost everything, it's just so interesting that they're willing to have this conversation in a Disney owned IP now. That they're even willing to have these ideas put forth that, you know what? What are the Avengers responsible for? What is going on? I mean, I love it. I really do. I love it. You know, there are characters absolutely who are who have no responsibility or ties to Ultron. Sam Wilson, James Barnes, Black Panther, King T'Challa, King T'Chaka, they had nothing. But again, Zemo's looking at the Avengers as this massive organization that is dangerous, and the people who carry that branding, so to speak, keep people who carry that Avengers banner, he looks at them all and says, "You're all dangerous then, because you're working with dangerous people who killed my family. Even inadvertently, Ultron wouldn't have happened if you weren't working with this guy." And there is a discussion to be had there. And I love that they are building on that discussion. I'm continuously fascinated with it. I'm continuously in love with the choices that they're making. Vex says, I wonder how dark Doctor Strange 2 will be. Oh, I wouldn't really use the word horror. John is just as flawed as they are then, right? Yeah, John is flawed. John is flawed, absolutely. But John is not the same character as Sam Wilson, as Bucky, not under mind control, obviously, as King T'Challa. I mean, you look at the people who have risen above revenge and have risen above murder. King T'Challa at the end of Civil War. Sam Wilson continuously, Steve Rogers, he chose to walk away from Tony Stark. They choose to walk away from this job. John Walker is dangerous. He is absolutely. John Walker is, in my opinion, 100% the villain. 100%.
I see him as much more flawed than the other heroes. I don't think he's comparable in a sense, because he's selfish, which is the one thing heroes aren't. It's the one thing we've always been shown. Heroes, they go out of their way, they risk their own lives to save other people. Whilst John goes out of his way and risks his own life for himself. He does it for himself. He wants to become an icon. He doesn't have a reason for doing it that is selfless. He is completely driven by himself and his own self-interest, which is why that's why I think he's not a hero. He truly is a villain.
Would you consider Killmonger and Zemo the same? Yes, I would. I understood. Now, Killmonger didn't have as much, story time, technically. I think they did a great job with him for the time that they had. I would have loved to have seen more of the Killmonger character. Unfortunately, that's not that's not the hand that got dealt to us. But, yeah, I would absolutely consider them cut from the same cloth, because you can understand where both are you look at Killmonger and where he's coming from, you look at Zemo and where he's coming from, and there is a layer of, there is a moral standard and a justification that you can find in their logic and in why they do what they do. You can't find that in characters like Loki, and you really can't find it even in Thanos is a mass murderer.
Yeah.
Thanos isn't a hero. He's just a mass murderer. You don't see that, and do I think that there is more redemption to be had for a character like Killmonger or Zemo versus John Walker? Absolutely. I think John Walker is 100% dangerous. He's driven by something else. He's not driven by tragedy. He's not driven by, something like that. John Walker is a different individual. He's dangerous, 100%. If I saw him come into a grocery store, I'd be like, honey, we need to leave. Because that's just it. That's all there is to it. Liz Edit says, I think with John Walker as well, it's more than just that he murdered in this episode. We've seen the power go to his head, like attacking people because they insult him. His motivation is corrupted, and I agree with that. That's very much so on point. And again, I love that we're able to have this conversation about Marvel, because this feels like comics. This feels like when I was growing up. I always was concerned when Disney bought Marvel that are they gonna ever get real? Is Disney going to continue? Will they play it too safe? And they're not hiding from the politics. They're not hiding from identity. They're not hiding from, racial tension. They're not hiding from issues that the comics have been tackling for 80 years. And again, is it as overt as I would like it? No, it's not. The comics went further in the 70s. The comics went way further in the 70s and the 80s. But I still applaud them for making these really distinct, really driven, character-driven stories and character-driven moments. And I love that we can have these, that this topic can be had, that we can look at this and have a really thoughtful discussion based around 50 minutes of television. And I think there is a lot to unwrap here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the the thing I find most interesting about John Walker is he's essentially a what if for I don't remember the character's name, but you know in First Avenger there's the guy he's already physically strong and he's really arrogant and he teases I forgot Steve Rogers' name. He teases Steve throughout it, and ultimately Erskine decides not to give him the serum because he is not a good man to begin with. That's essentially what John Walker is. He's that character.
I can't remember that character's name, but you're 100% on point. That's it exactly. It's power. And again, it goes back to the very, very old adage. If you want to test a man's character, you give him power. That's it. And it's true. It's true all the time. It's true all the fucking time. We see it in the real world. We see it replicated in fiction all the time. Comics have been telling this story as long as there's been superheroes in comics. If you want to test a man's character, you give him power. And you get varying degrees of failure and success and heroes and villains within that concept. Because continuously, Marvel Comics get, especially Marvel, because Marvel's always been driven, so many of their characters are driven by tragedy or driven by a certain despair. And you see the parallels in what they experience and how each character handles power differently. And then you see the ones who reject power. Zemo rejects power. Sam Wilson rejects that power. And that's in itself is fascinating to explore. It's not just the characters with power that are interesting. It's the characters who choose to reject the opportunity to be given power that I find absolutely fascinating. Okay, and on that, because we've gone over an hour, we are going to wrap up here because I have finished up my water. I want to thank everyone so much for joining. To my YouTube members, thank you for your support. It makes this content possible. And if you're interested in becoming a YouTube member, you can do so for just $2.99 a month. To everyone else, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please do consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with your friends across social media. It really does help with the analytics and the algorithms. Above all else, though, thank you all for choosing to spend an hour of your time after the show with Josh and I and having this thoughtful conversation with us. It's always a pleasure and a treat. Next week is episode 5. It's so sad to say we're almost done. I'm going to miss this show, but again, where one road closes, another one is going to be opening up, and I can't wait to see the future of this. So you all have a wonderful day, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.